Welcome to Recruiting is No Joke. I'm your host, Joe Lalgee. I am super excited today. We have another fantastic guest. I think we're at episode, it must be 115, 116. So super excited for today's episode. Cassandra, welcome to the show. Why don't you give everybody a quick introduction? I always like to start off with who you are, what you do, and who you do it for, which I know is that first question could go a lot of different ways, but who you are, what you do, and who you do it for.
Yeah, sure. My name is Cassandra Rose. I am an HR professional, daughter, sister, mother, native New Yorker, and currently I am a Fractional Chief People Officer at French.
I love that. I love it. So fractional, why don't we start there? Like, some people might not be familiar with the what fractional is. Also, there's a lot of people out there listening that might not even be in HR or talent acquisition as well. So when you say fractional chief people officer, what do you mean by that?
Sure. Fractional actually takes you back to those horrors of math in elementary school where you think about the fact that you're not whole. So a lot of times when organizations are startup or scale-ups where they need to get experts in the field to come in and really help them build to the next phase, they'll bring in talent for a fraction of the time. That might be project-based where you're on for a couple of months to help them get to another phase, or it can be monthly where they engage you for specific tactics. So that's what fractional means. You might see that across the C-suite. So you might have a fractional CFO, a fractional CIO, and a fractional CPO. And then when you're at a certain size and scale of maturity, that's when you would bring someone in-house to be able to do that discipline for you.
Amazing. I love that. And I feel like across the board, this fractional position has definitely been growing in popularity. I think for both, practitioners, so people who are in the position, and with companies as well. It seems like it can be an attractive thing. Well, kind of walk us through to the beginning here. How did you get started in kind of the people HR space? How did you kind of get started, and right away did you know like this is what I'm going to do?
Of course. I mean, everyone goes to kindergarten thinking they're going to be an HR practitioner, and then they're convinced.
Everyone's dream,
right? Everyone, and they're like, "Oh, I guess I could be an astronaut." But what I like to say is that I always knew that I was business oriented. Like I was one of those kids that when they would talk about stock prices and mergers and acquisitions, it would actually pique my ears when listening to the news. So I actually went to university to learn business. And then I wanted to become a lawyer. So I was like, business law sounds really good. That's what I majored and minored in, and took my LSAT, which is the admission test to get into law school. Didn't make it into the law school of my choice. So my obvious pivot was to become an inner city missionary, Joel. So I moved to Philadelphia through this amazing program where they match 18 to 24-year-olds who are interested in doing missionary work, but, probably aren't super serious. So they really train us up in partnering with local nonprofits and churches and just houses of worship to be the hands and feet of whatever that ministry that's going to be more permanently located there may be asking of us to do. It was a fantastic experience in that I was able to really think through and see, what does it take to move a city forward? When there's teacher shortages, when there are sanitation worker shortages, literally that is the work we would do. It wasn't this fancy thing. It was just like, how can you aid a community? So I fell in love with that work. I was even thinking about going into ministry myself. And then my student loans were like, I'm sorry, you must be confused. You must pay us back. So I started temping because I really had this pull for ministry, but I also needed to pay these loans. And every temp job that I got, whether it was 2 weeks or 2 months, was in HR. And one of the things that I realized was, hey, I'm helping people, whether that's through talent acquisition, I'm helping someone to get a job, through learning and development, I'm actually helping people to upskill, right? And I'm taking other people's money, the employer, to be able to benefit the employees. So I completely fell in love with the discipline. Though I had studied it as an undergrad student, having that real world experience actually made it real for me in a way that I've spent the last 20 years of my life dedicated to its practice.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's an interesting transition there too, though. From I mean, I guess it makes sense. Like, going from ministry to human resources. I mean, definitely people focused, and I think it's something which I don't think a lot of people, even outside of HR, necessarily understand too. Is when you're in HR, you're dealing with people in lots of different stages of life,
That's right.
through lots of different things that they might be going through, whether that's health, family, whether it's even things with like the actual job, maybe you have to lay people off. So I feel like it doesn't get talked about that much, like everything that goes into being in human resources. When you jumped in, what was there anything that kind of surprised you about being in an HR role, or I guess throughout the years, has there been anything that's kind of surprised you about the position that you just didn't know about it until you got in?
I would say everything. You do a really good job of just talking through the fact that HR gets to see the highest highs and the lowest lows.
Mm,
Like from recruiting on a campus where all this years of studying from pre-K and, your handprints all the way through the major that you chose, you are getting your first employer. I love campus recruitment because I used to joke and say, like, all you have to do is give someone an offer letter. They'll say yes, right? It's no negotiation. It's like, I'm making $0. These dollars.
No,
So
no. Nowadays, though, the TikTok videos, they probably are like
that's
learning how
true.
to negotiate.
Well, that's a great point. Social media has completely created a lens of transparency that in some parts I'm really excited about because there's a lot of taboo that happens that I think is unnecessary. And I think for a long time, people thought they needed to be gatekeepers because they thought the secret sauce of their organization was that
Yeah,
no one knew what was going on. Like, oh, you
yeah.
want to be part of this Fortune 500 company. You don't know what it takes to be here. And now you have Gen Z who's like, nope, this is my onboarding experience. This is my interview experience. This is how they promote us. And now people can actually take the truth. To me, that's a retention increaser because the
Yeah.
people who want that level of culture, who want to work the long hours or who want to have more work-life balance are selecting based off of truth versus what they assume your marketing team has put together to sell them.
That's so true.
That's a good.
I just saw a post on LinkedIn today from someone I know that was they were talking about the conversation around salary, for example, and how, really now when you're going into an interview with all the information we have out there, you should be going in at least with some sort of range and idea of what you're looking for. And then somebody made a comment on the article and said, 10, 15 years ago, all the recruiter trainers were training people or training recruiters not to give away what the salary is and to really sell people on the position to a point to where they want to accept it so you could kind of lowball them into an offer, which obviously just creates, massive issues when it comes to just pay disparity and people not being paid the same. And I think to your point, social media in general, and just like, I mean, I guess with we have ChatGPT now. We've got so many tools at our fingertips to where you could get that information. But before you had that sort of stuff would happen all the time, which is crazy. And I've been in those situations where you've had that pressure of the client wanting to get away with not paying somebody what the market value is because they're just not aware of what the market value is, which is crazy.
And what's I think is a step further of what you're saying. That's why I love your content. I've been a follower of yours for years around like, hey, I found the perfect unicorn candidate. They're purple, they are thoroughbred, they run fast, jump high, never take a vacation day. It's like, can we get them for $10,000 less? Right. I feel that
Always.
social media has now broken that ideology. But I
Yeah.
guarantee you that the people you're bringing on have longer retention rates. Like that's the other half of the sentence no one's talking about. It's like, yes, we no longer can pay people based on the lowest bottom dollar, but now I know what the job is worth and I know what I am worth. And when I look at a job and I go, hey, this job is paying, let's pick an astronomical number, $1 million. I'm thinking, you know what? This is going to take a lot of commitment. Am I
Yeah.
sure that I'm ready to hold a job that pays me $1 million? I think that gives people a lot of good pause and the right people come to the forefront committed to that level of work. So I think if we actually looked at attrition rates, if we looked at promotion rates, we are all better because of salary transparency at the beginning on a job post.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the state of the job market right now, the state of what people are experiencing. Obviously, I post a lot about this, not so much on LinkedIn, but more on TikTok and Instagram, because that's where a lot of people who follow me are kind of looking for work. I got lots of thoughts on this, but would love to kind of get your thoughts on the general state of the market, what we're seeing, kind of what we're seeing from people who have jobs, people who don't have jobs, who are looking, what we're seeing from the employer side as well. We'd love to hear some of your perspective on this.
Yeah, I'm going to use a very non-used euphemism around, I feel like we're in the rinse cycle of the next phase of work. And what I mean by that is we had this really precious time where everything was up and to the right, in terms of like companies were growing very quickly, salaries were growing exponentially with that growth, and everyone was just like trying to, if possible, get 2 remote jobs in order to like take in advantage of this like gold rush almost. And what has happened is that money got expensive. People weren't seeing the results that were promised in these short time frames, right? You were hearing about companies that would like IPO and be $1 billion that you never heard of. And now investors, board members, the general public's like, wait, what's actually behind the curtain? So I think what we're seeing right now is a lot of that lowering of expectations, because now you actually have to produce something of worth. And so I think where we are is that there's a correction that's happening, the pendulum swinging the other way. And a lot of innocent people are getting caught up in that swing. And so I say we're in the rinse cycle because I personally believe that the hardest part is either coming very soon to a close, if we're not already there. And I know I'm using a corporate term, but right sizing, like what a company actually can maintain in terms of headcount in order to be profitable and to be able to be around for more than 5 years at a time. So I think once the dust settles from there, we'll have a better idea of what the workplace needs from us. And I don't think it's 40-year careers. I think we all know that by now, but I'm starting to think it's not even 10-year careers. What employers actually need from a skill set is changing so fast that they can't forecast correctly. So when I see job descriptions where it's like, we need someone who knows AI. Do you know AI? Do you, employer? So if the AI person did show up to interview with you, would you know what questions to ask to make sure that the skill set that they even have actually matches the needs of your company? 1. 2, is your company ready for that transformation? So that's the other thing I would hope that other people can realize as you're job hunting. The rejection is not necessarily your skill set. The rejection is not your worth in terms of what you can bring. The company itself is adopting to a new reality and it's not sure how to place people. So I think really what you have to think about in your job search is this company far enough along on its own growth curve? And I know that's a lot of homework to do. I promise you, I'll try to make it like 3 simple things you can do. 1, when was the last time they actually had like a mass layoff or mass hiring? If it's been recently, take a pause, evaluate more. Are those people staying on long term? You can figure out tenure from LinkedIn. You can figure out tenure from Glassdoor in addition to active and former employees' opinions. 2, is this company actually adopting technology? Like any of their posts, are they talking about how they actually solve problems? If they're not, is your value, I'm coming in to help you get there? Or is your value, I'm coming in to help you continue to evolve this technology? You have to know where they are because they're hoping that their candidates really prove that out on their behalf. Because 3, and this is a truth that I'm coming to realize in 2025, no employer can take a risk anymore. The reason you don't see a lot of entry-level jobs, yes, AI may be a component of that, but employers are too scared to have someone come in, invest in them, and they don't meet the mark. And what that means is training programs have evaporated. Those jobs where it was just a job, it's a job and a half. Let's be honest, right? Like you have to help your manager figure out what they're doing as well. And that helps you grow. But that also means there isn't a ladder for people who just don't have those skills of organization, self-direction, a lot of those things. So I think if you're looking at those three elements, one, where is the company itself on its growth curve? And this could be a 100, 200-year-old company. Where are they? Is that a right place for you? Two, once you figure that out, how are you bringing value? Are you bringing technology forward for them? Or are you helping them along that technology curve? And how do you really evidence that in the way that you respond in your interviews and even your onboarding? And then lastly, just really think through how you can bring all of that together. I think that will help candidates make better choices and hopefully employers really understand the value that's in the market today.
Wow, there's a ton there. I feel like you could people can go back and listen to that over and over because it's really true. And I think the challenge that people have when they're on the job search is I think that they skip past step number one.
Yes.
In like really actually looking at where is the business, how far along are they? I love using LinkedIn as a tool to look at like what's the average tenure at the company. You can also, I think it's got even a graph that shows the headcount change. And if not, I think there's other tools out there as well that can kind of show that. But I think having that understanding is massive, right? It's just it's a huge thing. And I think that was maybe something that back in 2021, 2022, when it was kind of that gold rush, I think that was a step also that people just weren't doing because you were just getting approached with ridiculous money and, maybe a promotion and everybody was kind of getting an upgrade, but there weren't too many people asking questions about runway and about even just looking at the viability of what the company did, like the amount of companies that got funding. I used to get a list of every single company that would get funding each week. And I remember one week looking through and seeing that there was like 10 or 15 food companies. I think it was that it was like the fake meat or whatever. I was like, how is there $100 to $200 million of funding going into these types of businesses? But it was like everybody was getting money. And as I was recruiting during that time, not a lot of people were asking those tough questions. So I think now even more so, you want to be asking those questions and really digging in there deep. I know there's a lot of people right now that are holding on to their jobs, and this whole phenomenon has come up of like job hugging, which is really funny because 2021, 2022, it was all about quiet quitting, right? The people just, I'm happy. But what are some of those similarities? What are the differences, and why are we starting to see this? And people who are, potentially doing this, how does it actually impact the overall market as well?
Yeah, I think you have to realize that there is a world outside our window. And when I say you, I mean general public you. Joel, I know you're, a man of the world.
Yes.
And so with volatility, people seek security. I heard recently that fiction novels are taking off in droves, right? Because people want an escape. And I think whenever the economy is doing well, people want to risk and see what they're made of and stretch and go into those new roles. But when the economy feels a little shaky, when the world feels a little shaky, you're like, you know what? There's one area in my life that I can settle. And for a lot of people, that's work. And so I think that's where these are all new phrases, but the same concept, job hugging comes in. It's like, you know what? Even if I'm not happy, even if I'm not making the money I need to, I know what I can expect from this job tomorrow and next week and hopefully next month. This is where I will be. But as I said, we already have a ladder that's shortening for entry-level roles between AI and just the fact that you have to do almost like a job and a half in general. To high performers typically stay on longer. And what I mean by that is if there's a layoff, you're always going to hit across the swath of employee talent. But typically you're going to keep the high performers because they're already doing 2 or 3 jobs anyway. So those jobs don't come back post layoff, even 2-3 years later. You don't have entry level roles. So now what is work? And I think that actually pivots us to who are you as a brand? And what I mean by that is, if you think about the model of Uber, if you wanted to be a taxi driver, you would have to either gain a medallion from a city, like actually go and get a piece of pretty much material saying, we own this taxi and now you are your own business and you can hire people to drive this cab. Uber, Lyft democratize that marketplace that you or I tonight can go and be an Uber driver once we set up our account and go through our background checks, right? You have to think of work this way now. It's not okay, this employer needs this job filled. I, John Q. Public, can now go fill this job. It's who am I? What value do I bring? And do these two things intertwine? And I think if you are a job hugger today, you need to start thinking about that as well, because eventually the hugged job is going to either require more of you from a AI technology skill set level, or you're eventually going to want to move on. So what does the job look post you? You probably grew it. And that's why it's harder for someone who had the same skill sets you had at the beginning of that job to come in and fill it, because it now requires more work. And or the next job you have is going to ask more of you. So I think instead of waiting for employers to upskill us and tell us what to do, we have to decide, what do we want to be known as? What value do we bring to the market? Do you want to be an Uber X and have a fancy car and you're only driving to very nice events? Do you want to be regular Uber and do everyday things? And that's kind of hard to ask someone. It's like, hey, not only did I say that you have to learn a very specific skill set, now I'm telling you have to learn how to brand and market yourself with that skill set. But that is what entrepreneurship is. So I think work is becoming more entrepreneurial. And I think people who are job hugging are, again, in that rent cycle of trying to figure out how they become that. And anyone in the job market, that is your new task, to figure out how you bring the most value to any employer.
When we're talking about value as well, what's some insight you can give into what that value would look like? Or how do you kind of, I hear a decent amount, right? Like, hey, I'm going to, you want to display the value that you're bringing, and I have a decent, I guess, idea in my head of what that could mean. But I'm just curious from your perspective, what would be some ways for people to start thinking about what's the value they bring to their organization?
So for a long time, you could be a cog in the wheel. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I meant like this, let's say I'm in HR. My job in HR would be in benefits, which is what I spent half of my career doing. My job was to make sure that this company had the best benefits for the best budget that we had. Now I actually have to, my value is, what is the business goal? Are we trying to just stay alive? Like, we have 100 employees, we're going to stay at 100 employees. And then how can my role in the benefits function support that? That means I don't want those 100 people to leave. Now I'm going to survey them. What benefits do they want? Do we have that? Can we afford that? Versus if we're at 100 and we think we're going to scale to 1,000 and we might be going global. Now my job as a benefits person is to understand, what markets do we want to enter? What benefits do those markets actually, the top candidates in those markets, find attractive? So that's how I bring value. I could just say, oh no, I'm a benefits person. I don't know what's happening with the company. Or I can say, not only do I do my discipline, I also want to understand where the company is going. So it's connecting those two things. And people might be like, well, the CEO is not going to sit down with me and be like, hey, Cassandra, I need you to be able to understand my business objectives. But I'm telling you, your manager knows, because whatever their goals are, right, are coming from those business objectives. So if you are currently working, your next one-on-one should be, hey, what are some of the business conditions that we're thinking through for Q4 and into 2026? How can I use whatever I'm doing? It could be from, and I don't think these exist anymore, but mailroom all the way up. How does that actually connect? Because even if I were in the mailroom, should we have a more digital way of doing things so people are getting correspondences more quickly, so that way we can make better business decisions based on what's coming in? So I think as long as your value comes from, one, understanding where the business is going. If you yourself aren't able to do that from public sources, because you might be a private company, you might be a startup, ask your boss. It's on their mind. Ask your boss's boss. Get a skip level meeting, get that information. And then think about, again, what can you do with what you have? How can I leverage technology? It doesn't have to be AI to do that faster, better, more efficiently. And then how do I tie that to where the business is going? That's how you can create value and set yourself apart.
I love that. That's such a good explanation as well. And I think to me, my head just goes into kind of what you were talking about with the entrepreneurial mindset. I know there's the term thrown around intrapreneur, I think is what they call it. But it's just taking ownership, I think, of your work. And I think now it's so much more important. And I think understanding those objectives. I mean, obviously, we know that we have those baseline objectives of the business. We want to make as much money as possible. We want to make sure the margins are there. We want to save time. We want to, bring in more sales. Like there's some baseline objectives. But I think the more you can understand that in your role, and the more, I just think the days of segmenting out the business are over. So if you're in finance, you probably already always had a good idea of how the business is doing. But I just think of like marketing and sales, like all these roles were always kind of segmented and everybody just kind of doing their own thing. And it seems like now, and everybody, no matter what role you're in, you have to understand the business you're in and how your role relates to that, because then it just gives you a better idea too of like, where's the technology going in the area that I'm in. So for example, in HR, maybe you're spending a lot of time with employee relations. Okay, well, is there a chat bot? Is there some sort of AI tool that can help me relate to people at scale, right, that can save some time so I can get more of the high impact work done? It's huge. What about, future of work? We're looking at, we're coming near the end of 2025, which is crazy. So we're going to be in 2026. But what do you see like the next few years looking like in terms of roles? I know we've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but how do you see that form of work shifting? And what are some of the things you're excited about? Maybe what are some of the things that people should be aware of as well?
Yeah, what I think is the most exciting is that anyone who is early on in their career, I do think you have a leg up because you are a technology native. Not to give my age away, but I am an elder millennial. I remember learning about AOL and hearing dial-up and being super excited to hear you got mail. Now inboxes are like at 10,000 and I'm like, I don't even understand, when did I subscribe for this newsletter, right? Like that has
so
been
crazy
my technology journey. But anyone who's Gen Z and Gen Alpha who's coming right behind them, which is also wild in and of itself, technology is your reality. Make it now your best friend and leverage that in the workspace, because that's where a lot of these companies are going in order to survive in the next 5 years as any organization. You can be an NGO, you could be a governmental organization, you could be in the private sector. You have to figure out your competitive edge through the use of technology. So that way, very rote administrative things are now powered by technology to allow the actual talent that's in your organization to do their best work. And as a Gen Z worker, you bring that native view of like, why aren't we doing this to forefront? Make sure that you're advertising that in that entrepreneurial spirit. What are some tools that you can learn on your own time? If not, when you get into an organization, how would you tell them to approach this AI revolution? How would you tell people to adapt and learn it? Because it comes so natural to you. So that's one thing I'm excited about. I think for the rest of us, elder millennials who are either AI coded, we've already adopted that technology, or AI aversion, where it's like, I don't even know what this is. You're going to have to learn the technology at the very least to be able to understand what you're up against and what people at your level are utilizing to get ahead. So I'm not saying that every company has to do it. I think there are going to be certain professions that it's, again, a little bit more background noise, more plumbing than actual day-to-day usage. But do know that this is what your peers are coming to learn. And eventually what is advantageous becomes the norm. If I were in 2000 right now and, someone was like, hey, you're going to have to get an email address, I can say, I don't want email. I'll do letters. And for 10 years, I might get away with that. But eventually the crow comes to roost. So I say, no matter what, at the very least, just understand what that technology looks like. Look at what the mature curve is for your company. Is this something that they're interested in? Because the minute they are, that means so are you. And so going back, the third point is, what does it mean to be your own brand in your company? When people talk about you, what do they think? Because that's one thing I tell everyone who will listen to me. People have a perception of you. You can create it and be proactive in managing it, or data, Google will do that on your behalf. Which side of the coin do you want to be on? There is no opt out here. So when people think about you in your company, do you want to be the go-to person, the person who solves it? Do you want to be the efficient person? Do you want to be the person that gets stuff done? Or it's like, oh yeah, I forgot about them. Because if that is your perception of, yeah, they do good work, but no one can really validate or articulate what you do, yes, you are in danger of being replaced by someone else or technology. So just make sure that you're managing your reputation. And to me, that's a good way to create your career narrative, right? I think career narrative is a phrase that I like people to take away from this conversation around when I go from company to company, job to job. Why did I do this? How did I do this? This is what makes very strong interviewers, but this is also what helps you to go, hey, I went from pre-K to college because that was laid out for me. The next phase of your life, your career, you have to lay that groundwork for yourself. And I'm not saying you need to know what's happening in 2030. I can guarantee you no one on earth knows what 2030 is going to look like, but they have some ideas. They have some forecasts. Forecast that for yourself. Be the CEO of your career. That's going to make sure that it supports you for the rest of your life.
It's huge, too, that we do keep in mind that nobody at this rate of the speed of technology, no one does actually know what is going to happen in 2030. I don't think, I mean, from the hundreds of conversations I've had with HR leaders, people who are running AI startups, like you said, there's like an idea. And I think there's like a vision that people have, which a lot of times looks like a lot less administrational work, a lot more deep work focused on like human to human interactions. Because I think people have an idea of like, okay, obviously human to human interactions within business, you know, they don't want that to be replaced by technology. But I talk about this a lot. I think what can happen in times like this is, you know, the people who do want to shut down and go, no, you know, I don't want to deal with this now, or yeah, I think this could be a fad, or I think, you know, it could be something that I'm not seeing the impact right now, and I shut down. And I just think a much better approach is like what you said, where you want to be curious, you want to set the tone and own what's going on, and like almost own that narrative. And I think it's, like you said, it applies to so many areas. It's not just the technology, it's your own brand. I also think like the things that you do, I don't want to be like a hustle kind of bro with this, but I do think there is, and we're at a point where you have to be bettering yourself, and you just can't rely on the organization to like make you a better person, which I think that's always been true to an extent. But obviously different companies would have like management tracks, or they would have these programs you could get into, and obviously not everybody got into it. But it's like nowadays it's like you know, if you want to learn about AI, you can go to AI and learn about AI. You can go to ChatGPT and ask it, hey, what are some of the things that are going on in my industry that are impacting it? You can be curious. And I think, to me, that should be the way that you're going if you know, want to avoid that as much as possible, that risk of just getting hit unexpectedly. But even with that being said, like I just think the natural reaction for a decent amount of people is that fear of just unknown and not wanting to make a mistake. But I think it's going to be kind of, I think it's going to be forced on people to a certain degree. But the other thing I think about too is, like you said, because no one knows like exactly where things are going, I think there can be like this fallacy of, you know, there's people who are like way, way ahead on the curve, which maybe there's a small percentage of people, but for a lot of people, I don't think the learning curve is that far ahead. I think it's just some people have just leaned in and they've just tried to figure out in their own jobs, how can I be more efficient? How can I do things better? What advice would you give someone who's maybe on that, who is like kind of afraid, or they're more on that, you know, I think of the critics of the internet. Like, what do you say to the critics of AI? What would you say just to make them feel better, try and get them encouraged to actually lean in?
Yeah, one, I do not have stock in any AI company, so I promise you this
Good.
is completely my own. I read this wonderful book. I do not remember the title, but if anyone's so interested after our conversation, I will figure it out, about lamp lighters, right? Like that phrase doesn't even make sense to us. But if you think about it, before electricity, which wasn't that long ago in human history, there used to be an entire group of workers who would walk around cities and light street lamps. That was the job.
Wow.
And when electricity was coming in, they unionized against electricity. We were like, no, this is going to take jobs. What are all these lamps? Right? And we can laugh now. Like, what would you This is what people are saying now about
reminds me of recruiters. Recruiters are probably like, no,
right.
not that
Yeah, no,
sourcing
don't do
agent.
that. You can't do that. It'll be terrible for the workers. But now no one even knows that job existed. And I'm not saying
Wow.
AI alone will do that, but that's what technology is doing. When the internet became public, because remember, a lot of these inventions are first private and used for decades before they are made to go to the public. People are like, what will mail people do? I saw my mail person today. UPS and FedEx are thriving, right? Then it was like, okay, what are we going to do when we have intranets and people now know salaries and you have these communities and all this information is democratized? I can order food to my house. I can become my own entrepreneur in less than 24 hours. It's giving people more options. Technology is moving us forward, period, and stop. And anyone who tries to go against actual technology is like going against progress. That's what lamplighters were doing. So whether you want it to happen or not, whether it's AI led or whatever that may be, just know that jobs are transforming. AI might be an accelerant, but that doesn't mean there won't be something after AI to get us there.
Yeah.
So I think it's more like smartphones. There were people online for an iPhone. I wasn't that person, right? But they believed. They were like, no, this is going to change. I want to be one of the first. And I think people who are embracing technology and embracing AI are those people who stood online that we were confused because we were still, pressing ABC 3 times to get our word, and we were fine. Now, the idea of not having a smartphone, right? It's revolutionary to have a flip phone. That's where we are just 10, 15 years later. So I think what you have to do is reframe what technology is doing, know that humanity equals progress, be part of the progress. And if you are an early adopter, kudos, bring some more people along with you. Tell us why you're online for a smartphone at 3 a.m. in the morning. And then for everyone else, you will be part of the curve. You will not be left behind, but you and only you get to choose when you want to participate. And I say today's that day.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. Yeah, I think that's making that decision, stepping out, not being afraid. Those are huge pieces, and being curious too. I think being curious is just so underrated. And I think it was I read today. What CEO was it? I know a lot of CEOs recently have come out and said, their workforces are going to shrink dramatically and they're going to be applying AI. But another CEO, I can't remember the name of the company now, maybe it's on my LinkedIn news, but he came out and basically said, let me see if I can find this.
That they're rehiring all the people they let go because of the AI.
I did see that. It was, oh man, I wish I could find the CEO, but I think maybe the CEO of Walmart. But they basically just said there are going to be some shifts, but they said exactly what you said, which is like the work is transforming. So there's going to be new jobs that are created.
Right.
Fortunately, we don't know what those new jobs are. But again, this is where I think that mindset, for me, the mindset just needs to be not job hugging or anything hugging. You just need to embrace that everything is going to be different. And if you actually release and let go and say, you know what, it's okay that I don't know. It's okay that it's a little bit uncertain, because I've been hearing this uncertain word nonstop. And it's like uncertainty kills everything. It stops you from taking a risk. It stops you from trying something new. The uncertainty of that new restaurant, I don't know what it will taste like, so I'm not going to go there. And it's like, if you live like that, it just it can rob you of really, really great things. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be perfect. No, but I think that mindset of certainty and we need to know what the future is holding. Unfortunately, I just think we're past that. And it's like, if you embrace the change, if you just know, hey, I can be certain that it's going to be different and change, it can actually be, kind of a releasing thing rather than holding on to 20 years ago and kind of going, well, no, I wish it could go back. It's like, well, it's just not going to. It's going to be different.
I wish my street lamp was lit by someone instead of having electricity. That's somewhat of what we're saying. And I love how you shared that, because it goes back to, what does technology actually afford us? It affords us the ability to connect on a human to human level. So the ability to learn and unlearn, to be trustworthy and to trust. Like whenever I think about friends who are cynical and I need those people in my life to just go, are we doing the right thing? Are we going down the right path? I think about how many times do you trust the process? When you went into Starbucks, you trusted that there were people who showed up to work on time, knew how to make your beverage, and knew how to allow you to charge your card, right? When you're driving down a road or when you're getting on a plane, you trust that the pilot knows what they're doing. You trust that the people who are driving alongside you know how to turn on their blinker, and that the people in oncoming traffic know what those two yellow lines mean. So there's so many times you're trusting humanity and you're not even realizing it. So when you feel uncertain, think about all the times that you trust. And I promise you, it will outnumber those feelings of uncertainty.
I love it. I love it. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about something which I don't think I've talked a lot about on this podcast. But talk to me about, what do HR people do? What do people do for fun? So like just outside of work, talk to me a little bit about this, and even I guess through the lens of work, because I think people have an idea of HR, maybe just more compliance and following the rules. But I'd love to get your perspective on this and on what that looks like.
Yeah, I think when I'm HR in a room, I can sometimes feel like a parole officer. Like I've where people have said, "Uh-oh, HR is here, stop the fun." And sometimes that breaks my heart a bit, because I'm like, I'm an employee too. I want to go to that book club, or I want to be part of that employee resource group. But I know that there's a certain representation that I have to showcase to people, right? So that way, when it is time to be the heavy, when it is time to be serious and talk around policies or employee relations, people take me seriously. So what I have found to be very helpful, both in my professional and personal life, is joining communities of people like you. So it doesn't have to be inside your organization where you find your thiefdom, right? It can be outside. And so I actually am part of a lot of different community spaces because I want to know what they're going through. A lot of times when you think about leadership, it's a super lonely place, because there are many times where I'm like, I don't know if I'm making the right decision. And right almost makes it seem like there's a wrong decision. But I go back to those scantrons of like, what's the best answer? Something can be right, but is this the best course of action for where we're trying to go? And to know that there's 100 people who are HR comedians who can take our stories and we can share and be like, this is what I did and this is how it backfired, or it wasn't the best course of action. That sharpens me as a person to go back into my organization and be better for my leaders and for the people that I'm supporting. So my advice is go find something that's completely left of what you're trying to do. Maybe that's improv, maybe that's dancing, maybe that's, taking up pickleball. I hear it's really popular now, but also making sure that you're joining professional communities, because if you're not getting that from work, you need to be able to get it from someplace else, and make sure that community also lets you be you.
No, I love that. What are some of your go-to communities that you're a part of?
I have a ton, actually. I'm part of the Forbes HR Council, which is fantastic. Lots of great resources, and it allows me to share my thought leadership in a meaningful way. I'm part of CPO HQ, which is a fantastic community for small and mid-sized organizations. If you are a CPO and you're scaling, sometimes your team is just you. Sometimes you have a larger team. This is a great community to be part of. Troop HR. I'm also part of a few councils. So I highly just recommend, find something local to you. And guess what? Similar to a doctor or an ice cream flavor, the first one may not be the right one. So keep going. Try different communities. And when you find ones, how do you know it's the right one? You should come out feeling better than you went in. Right? You should come out feeling like you've been heard. No one judged you for what you did or did not know. You're not the smartest person in the room in those spaces. Those are the right places, because you need to challenge yourself to be better. Like you said, Joel, it's creating your own programming of learning and sharpening and having peers and mentors who help pull you along to the right places that you need to go.
That's huge. And it opens up those opportunities too. I think,
Yes.
it's one of the big things I talk to people about when they're looking on the job. Like I had someone today, and there was on TikTok, I run like a daily job search. show. And someone asked, they were like, yeah, I'm just exhausted and I'm so tired. And I said, well, sometimes you get to that point. That's when having that network and that community of people, go to some of those events, either online or in person, because that's also viable. There are also viable ways to find opportunities, but it lets you have that lens and be able to see from someone else's point of view. Hey, what are you going through, or what have you been through? And I just think having that, it's so crucial, and especially now when everything can feel digital. And I saw something, I think it was Gary Vee was posting about like the future of like I think it was talking about Gen A and how they're trending towards being like unplugged. So like not being so online. And obviously I'm a huge proponent of being online and digital things, but there is that part of it where, it was fine for like a time in a season, but I do think we are shifting towards more in person, more real connection, and obviously digital and online is great as well, but really connecting with people in just a real way is so huge. So I know we're at time for today's show. We're running a little bit over here, but where can people best connect with you? Where can they find out more about you, and where's the best place to get connected?
Yeah, definitely on LinkedIn and Instagram. I do put out thought pieces around benefits. I think that's one of the least understood parts of the way that people are rewarded and recognized in the workspace. So I always try to make it, hopefully you found from this conversation, like very digestible. Like, what does this truly mean, and how do I use it? How do I apply it to my life? So check out my content both on LinkedIn and on Instagram. You can find me at Miss Cassandra Rose. So it's MS and my whole name, Cassandra Rose.
Cassandra Rose. I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time. So much good insight here. Guys, I would encourage you to go listen again. And if you have made it to the end of the show, we love your listenership. We really appreciate you guys tuning in. And we'll be back next week with another guest. So remember to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And Cassandra, thank you so much again. Hopefully we'll meet in real life soon.
I know.
And maybe what's the Sesame Place? That's inside joke, guys. But no, thank you so much again, and we'll talk soon, guys.